Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily on this beautiful Thursday morning. I'm Ayo Makinde. And of course, we go straight to papers this morning. So much to catch up on right quick. And of course, we have Richard Mama with us this morning. He is a former editor of Business Hallmark and MD editor-in-chief of The Difference. Thanks for coming here to make a difference.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right, let's begin with the Guardian newspaper this morning. And, well, it's like all the papers are talking politics today. Well, the Guardian newspaper begins with suspense as APC orders its parents to sign withdrawal letter. And of course, you see that that's in inverted commas, and one is wondering what that means. But then there are the riders. Filling the form is optional, says Omishore, Fayemi, Pagudu, Akpabio, Oshiomhole. Okay, Akpabio, Oshiomhole swell APC presidential aspirants. There's a rider again, a third rider. Tinubu, the more the merrier. Long list of aspirants, good for democracy. Story continues on page 2. What do you make of all of that?
You know, MKO Abiola had this campaign jingle on Nigeria on the march again. We are on the march again.
I thought we were long gone. That was like 1992.
No, we are. This nation is wired for politics. We are wired for politics at every point in time. And we've been politicking. And we'll continue politicking. The British came and, joined the politicking. They left us with the politicking. The military came, joined the process. We'll continue with the politicking. So it's going to get a lot more interesting over the coming days. But I think the concern is that as it gets interesting, let it get interesting in a positive sense. That is, we should be getting to the answer, And that was why people were asking questions 2-3 years ago. Say, do we have the right structure to take us to where we are going? I'm not too sure we answered those questions very well. And so you will see a lot more drama going forward.
Well, the papers are definitely replete with that this morning. Of course, also switching to another newspaper, this time the Nigerian Tribune. It's still also talking politics. Well, Guardian is about APC. So is the Nigerian Tribune this morning. 2023, APC extends sale of forms, but PDP postpones LG congresses. Looks like there's a balance on the front page there. A number of riders, more aspirants join presidential race. Fayemi, Oshiomhole, Akpabio declare ambition. Amosun declares today. Bakare to declare May 9 in Abuja. Pedaro picks nomination form. If given opportunity to be president, I will serve with all my heart. Shimadio tells APC delegates in Taraba, Adamawa. Find all of that on page 2, I guess. But is there anything different now? APC postponing the congresses. It was like everyone is running against time, and at the same time, it seems the plot thickens.
It is, and invariably, it was going to get here. We were going to get to this point, because when you micromanage processes, by the time you open the prison gates, everybody wants to make a dash for it at the same time, and I think that's where we are. At a point, there were no candidates. People were saying, would there be candidates? Would there be a program? Should we just give a third term? Because the process was heavily micromanaged. When
micromanaged by who?
By the process drivers. When, for example, when there was talk about, constitutional amendments, constitutional review and itself,
Electoral Act and the rest.
Yeah, Electoral Act and all that. You notice that there was this inclination towards saying, no, there was nothing to change. The system is okay and all that. But the system was not okay. And that's where we are,
Very interesting.
So now you've opened the door, something like what happened with option A4. Everybody come inside. Everybody will just run in, and it's now a gamble. It's a lottery.
Well, interesting way to put all those things. But if you check on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, you'll still find this one. 2023, UN demands full participation. UN demands full women youth participation. Calls for $350 million humanitarian response plan as Buhari hails world body orders on fight against terrorism. Now, in terms of full women and youth participation, one will wonder, what do you make of that? Because there are a number of people that will be wondering, how else? I think we've been talking about this youth participation in our politics for quite a while. Who is listening?
Unfortunately, the system drivers are not listening. The youths have been saying, hey, we are 70% of this nation. We want a buy-in into the processes. And then you're asking them to go and look for 100 million to pick up nomination forms? How would they?
No, they don't. Do the youths have to run for president? They can run for local government chairman, House of Assembly.
No, what stops them from running for president? It's a democracy. If an adult can run for president, why can't a youth? It's their country as much as ours. When Macron got up to run, did anybody ask for his birth certificate? No one. So let him run. Let them run. And they have the demographics, and they also understand it's their nation to build. The older people is their nation to get away from. The youth is their nation to build.
Yeah, and the question a number of people have also been asking about that is whether or not youths can organize themselves, and secondly, how that is going to happen.
No, I think it's a moot point, because the youths have always organized themselves. The people who got independence for us were young people. They were young people. How old was Azikiwe? How old was Obafemi Awolowo at the time they were canvassing for independence? They were young people, So youth have always been active. The Nigerian youth movement got in there before the NCNC. So the youth are not, organizing themselves is not a problem. I think the challenge is that the system has been rigged against them. And we need to liberalize the system, because the country is costing us. Because the more tepidity in the process means that the whole country's GDP, the whole country's wealth, the whole country's potential goes down. Nigeria is a laughing stock in many respects across the world. And it's not fair.
That doesn't sound like good news. Let's switch to the Leadership newspaper this morning, and this is what you will find on its front page, also talking politics. 2023 presidency, APC protesters invade APC PDP secretariats, want party tickets zoned to South. That story is on page 4. I don't know what you make of this, because okay, let's check out the riders. APC records high turnout of presidential hopefuls as Fayemi, Badaro, Akpabio, Oshiomhole declare. Also joins race today. Party's presidential aspirants now 20. Bakare declares Monday. It's good for democracy, scribed to Tinubu. Oluwepo Hashim picks nomination form today, says new Nigeria possible. Well, seem to have spoken to the lower part, but that major headline, protesters invade APC PDP secretariats, want party tickets zoned to South. I don't know what you make of this.
Yeah, I think that in a sense, we should do things in a more decent, in a more structured manner. The protesters who are raising questions about zoning, they do have a legitimate point. The constitution of the country provides things for things like federal character. It provides things like, balance. It talks about quotas, and all those systems, as
and
it were.
also talks about the no one part being overbearing on the other.
Like so already the infrastructure of the nation is towards, turn by turn, which is actually what, zoning is. And even some of the political parties have already gone ahead to put that either in their own ground rules or in their own internal arrangements, So, and even pronouncements, across time, even by APC governors, for an APC governor, for example, to the effect that the party was already, looking at zoning to the south, in that sense. And understandably, after you have had, from Obasanjo coming down, we have had this turn by turn, north, south, north, south, north, south, in that sense. So the national mood, favors, that arrangement. But that is only half of the question, because the president, who the president is and where the president comes from, is just one part of the equation. The other part is whether the peoples of Nigeria are best served by in the governance arena. and that would require more than zoning. So it's important to zone at the beginning. My own thinking is that you should structure and constitutionally enshrine zoning, as a principle of power rotation for 30 years at the minimum. That's what I would say. Because after about 30 years, you come and review and say, do you still need zoning? But you need to put it there because you need to deal with responses, you need to deal with perceptions. And even the Swiss, looked at it at a point and said, every year they were fighting a Swiss war, inter-Swiss war, and they put zoning in their system. So you have a Swiss president every year, a council of about 6 ministers, and then January 1st every year, a new president takes over. January 1st, it goes to the next zone. January 1st, it goes to the next zone. Switzerland has had stability. It's one of the most stable nations in the world, today. Even the Tanzanians appreciate the fact that they need to build that internal harmony in their system. And they put in place, the Zanzibar and Tanganyika, rotation systems. So when you have political systems like us, that have fault lines, as it were, what you need to do is to put in place a system that will be able to taper the negative possibilities of those fault lines. So zoning just makes sense. It just makes sense. The point when people start just opposing zoning against competence, it's a faulty logic. There's competence everywhere. No, the reason for competence is the reason for competence. The reason for zoning is the reason for stability, inclusion, and management of diversity. There are two different issues. So it's in the party's interest for them to sit down and say, you know what? Because of Nigeria, we would work with a zoning arrangement that would deal with some of these, concerns.
Or should it even be a brainer? Should it be an issue? I mean, I would have thought that understanding of the political permutation or arrangement of Nigeria by the politicians should be a no-brainer. That, I mean, this is the way it ought to be.
You are right. But I suspect that there are a number of factors at play. We've talked about the individuals and their ambitions, people wanting to put out their ambitions. But I think that there is another very important factor. It very well looks to me like this whole confusion, right, is playing into the hands of people who themselves have some axe to grind with the entire processes that is unfolding. And that is unfortunate, because we've got to look at the national interest.
Well, it looks, there's so much to unpack in what you have said, but switch to another paper that is also leading with politics, and that's New Telegraph this morning. 2023, only courts can determine fate of ministers who refuse to resign. That story is on page 4, and there is a quote on the front page. Umuahia Federal High Court's ruling of March 18, 2022, which declared Section 8412 of the Electoral Act as amended unconstitutional, has paved the way for political appointees to seek elective offices without resigning their offices before primaries. I don't know. There's still on this side and that side on this particular matter.
Yeah, there is, simply because we have not put our foot on the table. When you make laws are supposed to regulate systems, and this National Assembly, from its first year, it was evident that it needed to deal with issues of a constitutional nature and deal with it quickly. They played bureaucracy with the whole process. Till date, they haven't completed the process of constitutional amendment.
Well, but it has to still go to the states for
yes,
concurrence.
No, but the point basically is that they went on business as usual. This is the final year of the life of this assembly, and you mean that issues of such nature, because a lot of the political complications we're having in the country, whether it is zoning, whether it is resignation, are issues that arose, even issues of big governance. Are we spending too much on when this administration was trying to set up ministers in the first place, there were questions raised about whether they needed to have as many as 36 ministers. And finally, I think we ended with about 42. And the explanation was that every state, by the constitution should have one. That was a low-hanging fruit. The National Assembly, recognizing that cutting cost of government was a national priority, would have simply said, you know what, we want to deal with this. Why would constitutional amendments take the whole of 3 years? Why not 1 year? Why not 6 months? If it's a matter of urgent national interest. So we've just played games. I think there's a sense in which the people who get into government think that the government and the country belongs to them. It's not true. They hold it in trust for we the people, and they must work with that mindset. They must come to a point of discipline where they recognize that the people are actually, the office of the citizen is greater than the office of the president, the office of the Senate president, because they're playing games.
Okay. Well, let's switch to New Telegraph this morning. Okay, well, that's the New Telegraph. The Vanguard newspaper this morning is talking politics as well, and this is what you find on its front page. APC hawks pressure INEC to shift deadline for primaries. That story is on page 5. Lobbied, failed to get buy-in of PDP chairman. INEC boss Yakubu rebuffs move. It's not going to happen, says INEC. APC extends deadline for sale of forms, holds congresses next week. Shomole Fayemi Akpabio, Jigawa Governor Badaru Abubakar joined presidential race. All of that packed on the front page. Of course, INEC has said it's not going to happen. There will not be a shift in the deadline. But where is this coming from?
I made this point that there is a suspicion that people are playing games with these whole processes, and it's important to interrogate the point. There's too much mischief in the air. Why would anyone? INEC sent out this timetable quite a long time ago. The parties got it. The parties did not. They have inter-party, discussions again and again. The parties did not raise the issues. So where is this coming from? If you're not ready, step out. If you're not ready, step out. It's a democracy.
Well, there's this one right below the picture on the front page. Telcos demand 40% increase in voice SMS data tariffs. NCC expert react. Another increase?
Yeah, those are actually the issues that the people on the streets are concerned about. The people, the real Nigerians, not these phony Nigerians, the real Nigerians, they are concerned with where they will find 40% more to make their calls and to do their business by data. That's what the real Nigerians are concerned about. And when you have issues concerning the real Nigeria, whether it is ASUU strike or whether it is...
We'll come to ASUU, but what do you make of this increase that the telcos are demanding? Of course, they haven't gotten there. We don't know what NCC is saying, the details you'll find on page 27 of the paper, but this demand, a number of people it's something that's been talked about for a little while, and we've had the telecom subscribers president here once who is saying they shouldn't even think about a fraction of 1%, increase. But is there a justification for the demand by the telcos?
I wouldn't give them a justification. But I would say that the telcos would be arguing things like inflation, which is a real factor, security, which is a real factor. So they'll be arguing things, and that a number of these issues not being addressed properly impinges on their cost element and on their bottom line. Those are the issues they will be raising. Okay. But I would also expect that, given the fact that incomes have not risen also for the average subscriber, there should be discussions, there should be negotiations across the line. It's just like the thing about whether you want to increase meter cost of electricity services, or whether you want to increase cost of air tickets, in that sense, or even bus fares. There should be negotiations and discussions. But even more importantly, it also points to the fact that we are poorly governed. Because if we are better governed, some of these factors would be addressed. When a business owner says, I'm spending 60-70% additional cost on generating, alternative power, it's a factor.
Absolutely. Well, you spoke to ASUU. ASUU strike, protesting students shut Benin City. That story is on page 6. Of course, we've been hearing that the, NANS wants to take some action, demonstrate, express their grievances, their displeasure with the continued ASUU strike. But I hope it doesn't get out of hand.
We hope so. We hope so. And it's in the interest of the system managers, that instead of all of them going to pick up nomination forms to be president, to solve the existing problem. The Minister of Labour has picked up his form. The Minister of State for Education has picked up his form. The Minister of Education, we can't find him. It's in the interest of the system managers to ensure that they sit on this and fix the problem. The ASUU strike is quite an unfortunate one. It should not have happened. It has happened, and it should not have lasted the better part of 2 months going into 3 months with, honest discussions. And I think that government should do everything possible to ensure that it ends now.
Well, the back page of Vanguard has sports. Real Madrid shock Man City. Find the details on the inside pages and the number. Okay, it's the stories on the back page, but quite a host of others. Madonna's Hand of God jersey sells for £7 million. I won't even try to calculate the naira value of that. Mr. and Mrs. has this one. So Mr. is sitting down at the dining table and protesting to Mrs. This food is served cold. Why? I like my tea, coffee, custard, and so on hot, very hot, and you know it. And Mrs. responds, well, I was thinking of a way to cure your hot temper.
Hot for hot.
Let's take a look at the Nigerian News Direct this morning. And what do you have on its front page? Telcos, 40% tariff hike. Nigerians to pay more on calls, text messages, data. That story is on page 2. You already spoke to that. But it's still a proposition, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay. South 2023 presidency. We're not interested in zoning. That's ascribed to Southwest women. What does that mean? Well, there are women we have been saying that
all kinds of cards have been put on the table and all kinds of interest
playing out.
I don't know how many the women are, and I don't know who the Southern women are. So okay. They say the devil is in the details.
Okay, most certainly. The inside pages has the details then. Daily Trust newspaper has this one on its front page. Guterres to Buhari, how to defeat terrorists. As a lead story on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning, and a number of writers you'll find on the front page. Says violence casting shadow of death over many Nigerians. UN OK's fresh $351 million humanitarian aid for Nigeria. We're glad the world has not forgotten us, Buhari tells UN scribe. Well, that's what you have on the front page of the paper this morning. And what do you make of both, whether it's the lead story or the writers?
Yeah, I think we need to defeat terrorism. We need to defeat terrorism. And I do not think we have done enough. I think the UN is spot on to have done its own intervention. But again, I also think that we need to get to the bottom of the issues and to also note that there were some dimensions that may not have been covered. For example, we have the terrorism in the Northeast, which seems to have been the focus of this visit, going to Borno and, all that responding in that sense. But we also know that the terrorism has expanded across beyond the Northeast. For example, in the Northwest. Conveniently or inconveniently, it is tagged banditry, but the dimensions of the crisis, for example, look at the demands from the Kaduna train, issues. Those are not bandit demands. Bandits are generally scavengers, economic, hustlers in that sense. By the time people start asking for, we want our leaders, or we want our people to be set free as a condition, part of conditions for negotiations, then you know that they are talking about organized formations that are bigger than economic, scavengers, in that sense. So we are dealing with terrorism, you know, and it would have been good, for example, for Guterres to have gone to Kaduna. It may also have been good for him to have gone to Plateau and Benue, you know, in that sense. It could have been good to arrange so that they would have a fuller picture of the terrorisms we are dealing with. Because if you deal with the terrorism in the Northeast, right, there's migration. So that's the issue. Before we start talking about other theaters, you know, and there are other theaters at the moment.
Well, so much to unpack in that one. The details, of course, you'll find on the inside pages, page 5 to be precise. A good number of stories also on the front page. 9 killed, many missing as ISWAP attacks Chibok. Did I hear again? Well, the details, of course, you'll find on the inside pages. And with the Daily Trust newspaper, we have come to the conclusion of the paper's review this morning. Richard Mama, MD, Editor-in-Chief, The Difference, thank you so much for being a part of our program today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
The Sunrise Daily returns right after now. Please stay with us.
The patience of our members have been taxed beyond tolerable limit. NEC therefore resolved to embark on a 4-week rollover total and comprehensive strike beginning from Monday, 14th February 2020, which is today.
On February the 14th, St. Valentine's Day, the National Executive Council of the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, announced a 1-month warning strike. On the expiration of the 4-week warning strike, it was extended by 2 months, against expectations of a full-scale indefinite strike. Academic activities have been grounded. Usual quietness takes center stage in campuses since the strike was activated in its chapters across universities in Nigeria. What more do you need to know about the details of ASUU's demand? The payment of earned academic allowance, the replacement of the Integrated Personnel Payroll Information System with the University Transparency and Accountability System, improved funding of state universities, and funding for revitalization of public universities, among others.
The NIDA report is 1. The renegotiation is 2. These are 2 key things that they gave time limit to. And the time limit given to for these issues to us, we don't know why it should be so long, up to 3 months.
But government maintains that ASUU's decision to prolong the industrial action is unwarranted.
No employee, no worker, by any principles at work. No employer dictates to your employer how to pay you. The important thing is for your salaries, remuneration to be paid as and when due.
The industrial action is now in its 10th week. While the strike lasts, it's believed that representatives of the Academic Staff Union of Universities and the federal government have been meeting to resolve contending issues. And it's expected that the truce will be reached before the extended warning strike expires.
Well, while that negotiation or non-negotiation is continuing, the students who are, some would say, the butt of the whole conversation between ASUU and the federal government are getting restless. A few days ago, they already made it clear No resolution of ASUU strike, no primaries of any of the, especially the big political parties. That's on the one hand. But while that conversation or that thinking is going on at the national level of NANS, in Benin City, some activities have already begun. And one is wondering, hope we don't allow this to fester or continue to ignore it and not give attention when it's due. But this conversation is very, very important. But I'm definitely not having this alone without Malpe. Good morning.
Good morning, Ayo. I certainly wasn't going to leave you alone as well. And indeed, you're right on that one. The fact that students of the University of Benin have started a massive protest. They're calling it Uni Street, where they intend to take their lectures, act as lecturers themselves, and be the students on the streets, taking their lectures on the streets of Benin City. And it looks like something that could catch on, because it looks like this time around, the National Association of Nigerian Students is serious about this threat that there will be no primaries for any of the parties if the ASUU imbroglio is not resolved. This morning, we're joined by Comrade Sunday Ashefo, who is the president of the National Association of Nigerian Students. You're welcome to Sunrise Elite this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. The last time I saw you on TV, I do not know if you have been on TV since then, apart from the threat to, disrupting the primaries, was when you had that conversation with the Minister of Education, asking that something be done about the ASUU strike. We remember that the minister walked out on that particular conversation. And has there been any response, any attempt at intervention since that particular walkout incident?
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing me to this show this morning. Yes, day after, I think that same day, a lot of calls appealing that is named for the minister to meet with us. That yes, our agitation are very, very correct. And yes, we met. We met at NUC.
So you've met again?
Yes, at NUC. Okay. And everything is settled. There is hope. Even by now, I was thinking this issue of ASUU strike would have been a thing of the past. The way he was talking emphatically that in the next couple of weeks, everything will be over. So we were, as a student leader, we returned back to our students and our colleagues told them that they should calm down, that soon we're a good news. But nothing seems coming, nothing good coming. Nobody is talking about us. Nobody is talking about our future. Rather, they keep, bringing momentums for political activities, and it shows that I'm responsible for the part of the government. That is where we are today.
It is a crying shame, really. And when you think about the frequency of the strikes in our universities and the fact that, this has totally disrupted the plans of many parents who, foot the bill, sending their children to school, and even for students who send themselves to school. There is a growing number of students whose parents cannot afford to send them to even government schools and are seeing how they can put themselves through the schools. And a number of them they're beginning to really look at how this affects the entire plan that they have for their lives. So right now, it looks like NANS has come up with something. You are threatening that there will be no primaries for the parties if they do not take into cognizance the ASUU strike and try to resolve it. How has that, let's say, strike action been taken?
Thank you so much. Let me start by commending my colleagues who are from Benin City, particularly University of Benin, that they came out yesterday to show and to resume back to our established university, that is University of the Street. University of the Street was established some couple of months ago, We were at the streets here in Abuja for like days before the camp president intervened on this matter. You know, we also believe, as being a spiritual father, himself and the Sultan of Sokoto, believing that they will also talk to these people. But since all our mediators have been overwhelmed, and it seems that the government is not, ready, then, well, we felt, yes, like I said, if we fail to fight now, we will continue this way. And if we fail to take action, the generation coming will also meet these crises that we inherited. ASUU strike is over 30 or 40, going to 40 years now. And nothing seems, no government is trying to put an end to it. And we are talking about education. We are talking about education, we are talking about life. Our life is no more being discussed by our leaders that would elected, but rather their focus now is about election. And this election they are talking about is because of their own parochial and selfishness interests. And you all see it. This month of May is very, very significant. Day after, the next thing they will be discussing is about February and March, which is presidential and other election. And there is tendency for these people for not discuss about us if we allow them now. We are battle ready. The highest they can do is to shoot us. If they shoot, they ask the police to shoot us. If we die, the generation coming will know we die because of fighting for them. They will also know that they shot or they shoot us because they are preparing for election. But we need to take action. And that is why we said, and we mean it. We are very, very, very serious about it. What you saw yesterday in Benin is just for them to know. We are any moment from now. Why we pick the two political parties? It is the PDP that handed over to APC. But it is APC that is the incumbent government. If you have an opportunity to meet the ASUU and the federal government will tell you they inherited the problem from PDP. The ASUU will tell you this negotiation has been on when Jonathan was there. But what we believe as a student, that is, government is continuous. They should be able to fight on and find a solution to this matter. We should not be at the receiving end every time. And as such, they should stop using us to play politics. Education Nigeria should borrow a leaf from Singapore, where they are using, education to turn their country around. But it's kind of fortunate that we are in a country where most of our leaders today, who are governors, who are senators, who are, they are the beneficiary of the free education. But yet, in those days, they are talking about Ali must go. They protested because they stopped giving them shaking. Not because their school were locked. Not because they were receiving lecture under a dilapidated building. They are not protesting because of that. So our lives should be better to these people.
So, but the question I was asking earlier is how the threat, because I am sure that, government knows that you mean business when you say that there'll be no primaries unless, and that is for the two major parties, unless the fact that students are at home is looked into. Yeah. But the question I was asking is, how has that been received? Have you received any calls since you gave that threat? Have you been invited to a conversation? Has ASUU itself called you to say, okay, we are about to meet with government, maybe that threat might not be necessary? What exactly has been the response?
Thank you so much. From the part of the ASUU, let me say that. I think those that I relate with in ASUU, like the ASUU chairman and my school, we spoke, and which I discussed with him, and from other ASUU chairman, I also discussed. They called, president. Yeah, you all know that our interest is for you students and that you should also understand, which, yes, I continue to say it. We are talking about the fertilization of our university system. It's a kill for every Nigerian student to be 100% killed with ASUU position. But from the part of the government, we have not received any call. From the part of public security, we don't receive any call. Yes, you all know, like I have told you, they don't even know if we issue a trust. Until, like I have said, until they see it coming, you know, Nigerians.
So there's been no call on the part of government?
There is no call. You know, even the Bible says, if they don't see the sign, people will not believe. There is a miracle somewhere. So there will be sign. And the part of the sign is what they saw in Benin yesterday. The students are resuming back to the street. And in a couple of days, you hear our itinerary. And that's, let's see how it goes. If we are joking, if we mean business, let's see how it goes.
Okay, let me quickly flip this to Kayode, to Ayo, whom I understand has questions for you. Ayo.
Thank you, Markwe. Comrade, I recall from the conversation you had with the Minister of Education, as Markwe also referenced earlier. One of the things that I recall him saying to you at that meeting was that your association will also be involved in the process, because you said you believe that students also needed to be at the table when the federal government and ASUU are having this conversation. How far with that one? Because I know that the federal government has a committee looking at some things now. We don't know how far that committee has worked. What's the latest with that one? Has there been any overture from government to invite you to any of such meetings?
Thank you so much. If this can be done to us as a student, what about our lecturers who do not come to, channels or, media and every time? It is just a statement. Action has not been taken. If you said we are going to be part of it, which is the only thing that I said he can pick from the request, up to this moment, they have not communicated to us. Is either via letter or text message or, on the dailies. So if ASUU said there is a lot of agreement and a disagreement between them, and yet they have not fulfilling it, is it not happened between us and them now? Over going to 2 months now, he said we are going to be part of it. And thereafter, a meeting has come up after that. Yes, he said, he told us that he's going to take it to discuss with some people, and probably the ASUU or part of the government, the negotiation committee, and to let us know. They even asked us to choose one. You want to be an observer or want to be part of, there is another committee, they make mention. But up to this moment, I have not, neither any of my executive, the National Secretariat email has not received any letter from them to be part of it. So that is to us. You know how many more they have done to our lecturers?
Well, comrade, one other issue that's a little disturbing for me from a number of issues that my colleague has raised with you is concerning this protest that you are talking about. We know, and no one can remonstrate the fact that protests are legitimate rights of anyone. And it is also been argued whether or not police should be informed to provide security, to provide protection and all of that. What are the steps that you are taking and that you probably also want to advise your colleagues in Benin City to take to ensure that miscreants do not take advantage of this situation? Any government would want to avoid a repeat of what happened during the NSAS, where a legitimate activity was hijacked by people who literally bad-mouthed the whole thing. So is there anything being done to ensure that the protest remains as peaceful as your association intends it to be, so it's not hijacked?
Thank you so much. Let me say this. Whenever you see any protest being hijacked by hoodlums, there is no hoodlum anywhere. It is the government planning or, mobilizing some people just to disrupt, or probably the government, they don't want such a message to be passed. But let me now tell you, as a student and as a student of history, we are battle ready and we are fully prepared. If you look at it, when we called for a national action the other time, nearly virtually all the 36 states, there was protests in Lagos, in Ogun State, in Niger, in Kaduna, in Kano, mentioned. Did you hear any casualty? Did you hear it's been hijacked? If they want to hijack it, we will plan for them. We know them. We know that the extent they used to go. They even go to the extent of even, buying some of the student leader just for them to use it against us. Using divide and rule among us. We have grown beyond that. We have grown beyond that. We are decent students across all the nation. We are matured. Our message is simple. It is about future. The message is ASUU should resume. The ASUU strike should be called off. So, if we are coming and we know you are a miscreant, we know you, we know ourselves. You are in a department, you are in a class, you are seeing someone that doesn't look like your student, you know them. So if the government are planning to use miscreants to disrupt our protests, we will know how to tackle them. We are always preparing, that is what we call, plan B. We always have the plan B for them. As they are coming, we'll give it back to them. So I can assure you that will not be, anybody, any thought of, violence. It's going to be peaceful. It's going to be peaceful. I can assure you of that.
What I have, also heard you say is that you are firmly on the side of ASUU. Do you think that, in some way puts you in a difficult position? Because now, if you're going to be in the mediating process before now, or if you're going to be drafted into the mediating process, you are not going to be unbiased. You're already biased in favor of ASUU. Do you think that could, bring out an outcome that will be desirable to both government and ASUU?
I don't think what I've been saying since. I've been saying this is our position. I said our position is we want the ASUU strike to call off. Indeed.
What I heard you say was that, what ASUU is doing is for your benefit.
I said.
And so you support ASUU, yeah.
I said the revitalization that is part of the agitation of ASUU is a key for every Nigerian student to keep with their demand. You, as you are here, I'm sure, I don't know, majority of our leaders today, the political office holder, their children, you see them, they troop out of the country to go and celebrate their children. It is because if you ask us to join, the purpose of our joining is to see what these people are saying, because when ASUU and federal government meet, ASUU will say it is A, federal government will say it's B. That will give us a pre-information, a direct information. So if this person is saying A and this person is saying B, we'll be able to say that what they said, it is A. We'll be able to know that it's the ASUU that is the problem, or it's the federal government that is the problem. But let me tell you, on this matter, we see old federal government responsible for this incessant strike in our education sector. That is a fact. We should not shy away from that. They should show sincerity in honoring any agreement. Are you getting me? when you are talking about, there are some things that I think, as a Nigerian student, we are in this country together, and which I think is part of the solution that I think the federal government should look at, and ASUU should also look at it. If the federal government wants to be sincere to us, it is not only ASUU, it's not only our lecturer that is complaining that IPPS is giving them issue. Other federal civil servants are also complaining. So if other federal civil servants are complaining about IPPS, then the federal government should find something about and find a solution to it. And again, to our own solution is this issue of supremacy, battle between them is affecting us. The supremacy battle between them is affecting us. We are always bear the brunt.
Indeed.
We are the receiving hand.
Indeed.
We are the ones suffering. They say when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffer it. And again, the federal government should also show. Okay.
Comrade, I am so sorry. We're totally out of time. I can tell you that, when eventually whatever action the union decides to take, that we will be certainly there to give it coverage and get the voice of Nigerian students out to those who need to hear it. And I'm sure that a lot of Nigerian parents and those who are related to students in universities, of course, also support your stance, asking that attention be given to tertiary education. But thank you so much for coming on this morning. Comrade Sunday Ashafon is the President, National Association of Nigerian Students, and has been speaking to us here in our Abuja studios. We take a moment now, be back shortly to ask what other ways can we find to mediate the crisis between the federal government and ASUU. In just a moment, please stay with us.
The number of times that ASUU has gone on strike since the Fourth Republic resumed is about 16. This being the 16th time, and there's quite a number of records. The longest of them was 2 years ago in 2020 when ASUU went on strike for 9 straight months. And that wasn't the longest in Nigeria's history. It was in the 80s or in the 90s. ASUU was on strike for 18 straight months. Is this going the same way? We hope not, but this is coming on to about 3 months now. What other steps need to be taken to resolve this issue once and for all? Comrade Issa Aremu joins us to have this conversation. He is DG of Michael Imodu National Institute for Labor Studies. He joined us virtually from Ilorin. Thanks for joining us this morning, comrade. Now, I'm sure labor issues aren't strange to you, but is this in order as far as you're concerned, or there is something strange that people need to understand? Can you hear me, comrade?
Well, Ayo, let me convey my belated May Day greetings to you, as well as Moekwe in Abuja, and also the silent, and then the silent channel workers that have been working to make us to know what is going on at the national level. But as you said, Ayo, my sympathy goes to, solidarity goes to, I think reduce the volume of this. Yes. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead, comrade.
My sympathy goes to the students, and I want to express my solidarity with my comrade, junior brother, comrade Sunday Ashafo. Because as they say, when the two elephants fight, it is the grass that seems to be under pressure. It is clear that when anytime the federal government as well as ASUU disagree, and we have this strikes, it is clear that students are the ones who are not in classes. They are the ones that we miss their normal academic calendar. Some signing for 3-4 years courses, they end up 8 years. And as Sunday said, it's mostly the children of the poor, because the rich often always migrate to private universities, not just in Nigeria, but even abroad. So I can really sympathize fully with the student. And of course, the one that captures the imagination now is the strike of ASUU. But you know, there have been endemic problems in the universities, poor facilities, brain drain, the corruption within the system. You know, there was a scandal about, sex for marks, in the university. So students have only been under stress. They are the one bearing the brunt of crisis in the universities. But Ayo, as you said, the problem is not insurmountable. What we have at hand is still industrial crisis, it's labor crisis. And if there's a will, there will be the way. Point blank, my suggestion is that the two parties should return back to dialogue. And in this case, we need social dialogue. I listened to Sunday very well. I think there's a way he put it. He said that this battle for supremacy, who's right, who's wrong, both within the federal and the ASUU, federal government ASUU, will not work. So what I think is important is that we should return back to social dialogue. And Nigeria has very vibrant institutions for resolving grievances at work. You know my background. I came from private sector, textile workers, possibly the textile industry, just like any private sector, chemical, petroleum sector, there are a lot of disputes at work, but we always resolve the issue through collective bargaining. What has worked in other sectors must work within the university system. So I would like to quickly suggest that the National Labour Advisory Council should quickly be convened to specifically address one item, which is the issue of the ASUU strike. What is the National Labour Advisory Council? It is the statutory body that has been established as far back as 1955. And I want to commend the current two ministers of labor, namely Minister Chris Igige, as well as Minister Festus Keyamo, because they've just reconstituted that committee. It's tripartite. It includes both federal government as employer of labor, it includes state government, it includes NECA, which is the Nigeria Employer Consultative Association. It includes the two respected organized labor centers in Nigeria, namely Nigeria Labour Congress as well as TUC. It also includes state government who handle labor issues. Now, the beauty of this National Labour Advisory Council is that we'll be able to look at the issues dispassionately, and there will be objective assessment to look at the facts that have been on the table due to this strikes. But the last quick point I want to clearly raise here is that, and I'm happy, Ayo, you went on memory lane. This is a legacy problem. It's a legacy problem. In fact, as a matter of fact, since 1999, there have been work stoppages, strikes, close to 16 times, as he put it. If you put them in terms of a number of months, it's been calculated that ASUU has been on strike for 50 months since 1999, which comes to averagely between 4 to 5 years, within the last 23 years. 4 to 5 years is enough for you to train an architect. It's enough for you to almost train a doctor. It's enough for you to turn out social scientists. Now, for whatever reason, universities have been shut down, public universities. And Under Obasanjo, for instance, it took 18 months of strikes. Under the Yaradua, almost about 4 months. Of course, under Goodluck was about 13 months of strike. So it's a legacy problem. And you can even go before we return to democracy. As far back as 1981, there has been this contestation, but it has become more prolonged now. And for even me, as a labor leader, I'm also learning new language of rollover strikes. Rollover strikes. So again, but as Mokwe tried to engage Sunday, I mean, this is not the time to say who's right or wrong. I think we should look at what the facts are. And the facts are industrial issues. Namely, collective agreement has been entered into, that's ASUU position. That when you reach an agreement, try and obey the agreement on the part of the government.
Which makes it a little more disturbing, Comrade Aremo, because the arrangement that we're talking about now dates back 2001. Renegotiated, unresolved, renegotiated in 2009. All of that agreement is what is still in contest now. And the federal government just recently, after a number of, I think the warning strike, a 1 month warning strike of ASUU, decided that there is a need to renegotiate the 2009 agreement, which the previous government had begun to implement. So what's the assurance we have that this Labor Advisory Council that you're talking about will come up with facts that are not already known, both to the federal government and to ASUU, who are the main contenders in this issue?
Yes, what would be new about that is that we've been having dialogue. And dialogue means engagement between two parties. And when you also have dialogue as we are having it now within two parties that seems not just to disagree, but they seemingly seem to be disagreeable. And that's very, very worrisome in the world of collective bargaining. You can disagree, but don't be disagreeable. You know, at a point, government said they were waiting for ASUU. ASUU was not available. ASUU also accused government of not notifying them, have not called them for meeting. So you raise a point of not just disagreement, but at personal level, at institutional level, there seems to be lack of trust, deficits of trust, deficits of understanding. You can't get proper results within that context. Now, what makes NLAC very different, National Labour Advisory Council, is social. There are other parties that will be involved in this process. And let me put it this way. I was at the meeting in Abuja, that was on Sunday, and I deliberately listened to the speech of the Vice President, Professor Osibadi, who represented the President, and he made the point, which is very significant. He said, government is not unmindful of what the students are going through. It's not unmindful of the demand of us. In fact, he went further to call on the labor centers, namely the NLC, TUC, to also see how to mediate so that we can have proper discussion. Now, that gives a window for social engagement. What means social is that other parties will be there. You are going to have NECA, you are going to have key actors from the respective Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Education. Don't forget that this dispute is actually between the Ministry of Education and ASUU. And there are two ministers there that are involved. The role of Labor Minister, in this case, Minister Indigi, is to actually mediate, to facilitate discussion. Of course, now the way we have put the issues is as if it's the Ministry of Labor versus as ASUU. But the beauty of that NLAC is that it will create a forum. And I could recollect the last meeting of NLAC that took place. Minister of Labor actually charged other stakeholders at NLAC to please intervene on this issue. Now, the beauty of this intervention is that we need to look at the facts from professional point of view. Nigeria has a tested framework for resolving conflict at work. We have problem in, there are a lot of challenges going on in different sectors, but once you have a framework for negotiation, we can look at the issue of the demands. There are two areas of demand. I can share this with you briefly. There are two types of disputes. You have dispute of rights. You have dispute of interest. Dispute of rights are those things already enshrined in your own agreement with your employers, that if you work, that shall be paid. Am I communicating? If we want to work, nobody can lock you out as a lecturer. A lecturer too, if you are paying your salary, you must teach. Those are disputes of rights. Now, there is what they call dispute of interest. Dispute of interest are those new things you want. You want funding for education. In fact, I'm talking to you now, don't forget, I'm a DG now of this institute. We're also defined as a research institute. And for the past 3 months, the 67 research institutes have been on strike over issue of funding for the research institution. Now, those are disputes of interest. You want more funding, and that has been ongoing. I mean, I agree with those who have commented Nigeria should spend more on education. Nigeria should be able to prioritize education. We have to increase the budget rate, but those are disputes of interest. You need different approach to handle those ones, because that requires engagement, discussion, and in a democracy, you even need appropriation. You need to bring all stakeholders around so that we know everybody knows that we can't run, Nigeria cannot be part of the promising developing countries of the world without funding education. So we need a different approach. So again, those are the facts that will flow.
Given what it is, sorry to interrupt you, comrade. I just have to come into the conversation somehow. You have, described in detail what, is something about interest and something about rights. I'm just wondering, because it looks like what ASUU is asking for right now is a mix of the two. One of them bordering on their salaries and the payment method. Government continues to insist on the use of IPIS, saying that there is nowhere in the world where employees dictate to employers how they should be paid. The university system that ASUU is saying, well, we have also developed something which we think is better because we have a peculiar situation within the universities. This is a fundamental problem because it borders on rights, it will seem, from what you have enumerated already. How do you think this should, be sorted? Do you think that it should be going to the industrial courts so that at least every party can abide by what the court has said? In this instance, maybe the court will have a dispassionate view and be able to say, or be able to call a spade a spade.
Yeah, well, more point, I think even the court of public opinion, I think Sunrise, you have provided a lot of platform for engagement between government and ASUU for a long time. So, you have industrial court, you also have court of public opinion. But any court you have, what you get in the court, in most cases, you get judgment. You can hardly get justice. In the court case, somebody will win, somebody will lose, which is fine. And that may not resolve the proof. So that's why I think it's important to promote more of social dialogue in which there will be win-win options. And that's what NLAC provided for all of us, in which we look at what the facts are. We indicate, as you pointed out, the issue of salaries. I also agree fully with ASUU that you can't drive serious educational service delivery with miserably paid lecturers. And the last time the salaries of lecturers were reviewed was 2009. It's unacceptable. There's need for us to revisit that. It's extremely important. Even if you have gotten an agreement by now, it's open to renewal. You know that even the issue of minimum wage, we have reviewed minimum wage almost about 3 times within the last 20 years. It has been open to review. There's one in 2010, 18,000, that will move to 30,000 in 2019. So it's dynamic. Now, I also agree, but there are issues that are of interest. That's the point I'm raising. When you are talking of IPPS, what do you call it? University Transparent Mission, UTAS. Again, those are issues that is of interest. They are also managerial. You also have to listen to what government have said, that people employ you, this is the framework. But however, that framework is not perfect. I mean, so many public civil servants, they are on IPPS. They also have their frustration, and they have unions there. But they are perfecting through discussion to see how we can get it resolved. If everybody looks for its alternative platform, and you say until that platform is implemented, then there will be stagnation in running public service. I mean, just like the same way you have a pension scheme. But all what I'm saying here is, and I think, Bokwe, you put it better, is not to take side with anyone. We have a framework that can discuss that, and that's National Advisory Council. And we should convey that immediately as a matter of urgency. On the last note, the point I want to raise quickly here is that even when there was no strike, Mokwe, you agree with me that only one Nigerian university has been rated among the top 10 in Africa. When there was no strike, the quality of education is going down. When there was no strike, we have brain drain. When they are on the part of the lecturers. So when we now compound it with strikes that's come to 50 months in the last 22 years, something is worrisome. So all the two parties should be moved by these grim statistics that we are having new illiteracy, that already we have 30 million children out of school, and that university students are now on the road demonstrating instead of being in the classroom. We can't drive development in Nigeria along that line. And I'm very sure federal government knows the implication of this.
Okay.
I'm very sure ASUU also know the implication of that. Those are the facts that will be brought to the table at the National Advisory Council, which is independent, which is more inclusive, which will be able to give platform for more dispassionate discussion.
Now, comrade, just a quick one.
Who are valuable to facilitate that discussion?
Who takes the lead on setting up this council that you're talking about? Who is the party? Which party is supposed to take the lead on setting up this NLAC?
No, I think all parties have to take the lead because we all have access to take the case there. But above all is the responsibility of the Minister of Labour.
Okay, all right.
And I think that the Minister have told you, I said so at the last meeting, call on all the stakeholders, that we should take the advice. Because the Ministry of Labour is also worried about this. Now, all we need to do is to formalize this new thinking.
Okay.
And honestly, with a time frame, so that once and for all, we put an end to it. The issue will not be resolved immediately you convene a meeting, but let there be cessation of hostility on the parties. Let students return back to work. Let there be commitment, that there be discussion that is going on. And with that one, we can have a win-win solution to resolve this problem.
Comrade, we have to thank you very much this morning for this new thinking, as you put it. Comrade Issa Remo is DG Michael Imodu, National Institute for Labor Studies. Thank you once again for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Well, it's all borders on leadership, doesn't it? More of that when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Be it youth unemployment, ASUU strike, all kinds of restiveness, economic instability, poverty, John Maxwell says everything rises and falls on leadership, and that leadership takes a process. And Nigerians are on the march again, as we began by saying on the program today, looking for another set of leaders at the federal level and at the state level, for the legislature and for the judiciary. What are we to do? What are we to look out for? These are some of the conversations that we'll have with Mr. Atedo Peterside, who is the founder and a foundation, and also was his founder, president and a foundation and founder at Stanbic IBTC Bank PLC. He joins us virtually. Thanks for joining us this morning, sir. Well, John Maxwell said everything rises and falls on leadership. And I know that you believe that as well, but it would seem like, I don't know, is it that we don't have leadership now? Can you hear me? Okay. I'm I'm not sure that we have the audio yet, but we most certainly will get back to that because at the end of the day, everyone has to do what we need to do to ensure that we get the right set of people into office to do the things that they need to do for us to get that kind of Nigeria that we need. I mean, a number of people have referenced, I think it was even in the course of the week, or maybe earlier, that somebody quoted the old national anthem, though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand. So, do we have that brotherhood standing strong? Even the new national anthem, the current national anthem, also speaks to one nation bound in freedom, peace, and unity, and all of those things. So, do we have that unity? If we do, what then is it that makes it difficult for us to get the kind of leaders that we want? Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Well, I began by saying everything John Maxwell said rises and falls on leadership. And it would seem like everything is rising or falling. Which one is it in Nigeria? Does that mean that we don't have leaders if everything is not rising as we want, or everything is not falling as they should?
Yes, I think definitely we have a leadership problem. And I say that because if you look at the results with the economy, very disappointing. I mean, I give you just one statistic. In 2015, there was 68 million Nigerians who were fully employed. By 2020, that figure, official data, has fallen to 31 million people only. So we've lost over 35 million jobs in 5 years. Now talk about leadership. Some of us have been thinking deeply. What is it that needs to happen before Nigeria turns the corner? You cannot separate economics from politics. But there are three things that I thought were preconditions necessary before we can have improvement. One is the Electoral Act. The quality of the Electoral Act makes a big difference regarding what type of candidates you attract. If you have an Electoral Act that enables crooks to succeed, then only crooks will run for office. And number two was voter apathy. If people refuse to come out, then the handful of people who come out, who are not always the most discerning, will determine the outcome. So it was important to go on a recruitment drive to get young Nigerians to come back and believe in the system. And then the third thing is that since one believes in democracy, and so therefore you have to look to the democratic process to achieve, bring about any change or improvement. A country is as good as its political parties. So if good people stay out of political parties and keep screaming and abusing them and say how bad they are, hey, the change also has to come from inside political parties. So there's an extent to which I'm appealing to good Nigerians to get into the political parties. So you can scream at them from outside, but also get inside the party and scream at them to improve. So you need those three things that bring about good leadership in the country. Better political parties, a good electoral process, and of course, voter enthusiasm. Now, 1 year ago, all those three were scoring very low. Now they're still not very high, but at least they're getting better. Thank you.
We spoke to those employment or unemployment figures, and that's not to even add the population growth figures to the dynamics. You haven't also considered the poverty figures in the dynamics, which a number of people have also spoken to. So while we speak to the recruitment platforms, which are these political parties, what in your opinion would you say? Because excuse me, when we talk about leaders in the country, many people look to the president and the governor. But then I usually look at the engine that they have to drive. What, in your opinion, is wrong with because the leader, for instance, is supposed to be the driver of the vehicle, and he's right there behind the driver's seat at the federal level or at the state level. But then he's not leading himself. He's not leading alone. He has a number of people to work with. So there are those who also wonder, is there anything within the system that makes it difficult for the leaders who make promises before they get into office to do the needful?
So in fact, some people actually get into office without making any promises. So that also shows how effective the system is. Some get into office without taking part in any debate. Nobody knows what they believe on the economy. They don't know. Nobody knows what their thoughts are on anything serious, and they get into office, whether on the basis of religion or tribe or something else, or they're popular for the wrong reasons. But let me just explain something. Talk about why there's no progress. If you check your records, and nowadays everything is available on YouTube. In 2012, when President Goodluck Jonathan's government decided to remove the fuel subsidy, I came on Channels Television. The beauty of the internet age is that if you go on YouTube now, you will find it. I came on Channels Television to argue the case for deregulation. In 2019, I was the keynote speaker when the Nigerian Economic Summit Group was having its 25th anniversary dinner. They made me the keynote speaker. They said they wanted somebody who was there from the beginning. When I spoke about a number of things, including the petrol subsidy. Some young people in the room told me that they noticed that when I was talking, because they wanted me to compare when the Economic Summit began, and then 25 years later when I was talking as the keynote speaker. And I mentioned that sadly, some of the things we were debating 25 years ago, like the removal of petrol subsidy, are the exact same problems we are facing today. And they were shocked because they thought these things were new because they are very young. That shows you how the country has not made any progress on some key issues. And now we have a situation where we're talking about spending 4 trillion naira on one item, petrol subsidy. Is there a family that spends 98% of their revenue, or 90% of their revenue on one item? So when they have leaders who are unable, either they don't understand or they don't have the courage to tell the truth, then you'll be stuck on things like this. But please, let's get one thing straight. I never said anything was easy. I remember when under Babangida's government or the previous military government, definitely, they were talking about fuel price adjustment. Chief ASUU was the secretary in charge of petroleum. You would have thought he was in a debating society with the whole of Nigeria. People say some things are difficult, but what is the quality of the arguments you put before people? Do you understand issues well enough to sell them to the populace? I give one example from Germany. Germans told me that when Angela Merkel was going to convince them on COVID, that she's going to lock down the whole of Germany. I've said it before on TV. But many of them were diametrically opposed. They planned to come out the following day and stage, protests. But the quality of the speech she made to the German people the day before, even those who wanted to come out on protest, when they heard that speech, they were so impressed. Some of them even wept. So leaders are supposed to lead. They're supposed to be able to explain things. They're supposed to be able to convince the populace. If your leader is not convincing, and it's dull, or he has to be dragged out to come and say the most basic things, how can you convince people in difficult times? Nigeria is facing difficult economic challenges. We no longer can afford easy choices. We don't have them. We run out of time. So it's for leaders to be at the forefront, to lead by example, and then convince people with the quality of their arguments. Are people, if anything, are very tolerant or they have been tolerant? But how well do you lead them is an issue. And that's why we are hoping that in this new dispensation that comes about next year, we hope the Nigerians will choose the right kind of leaders. And I think it's not focused on presidency alone. The next most important election to me is Ekiti governorship. Why am I interested in that? Because we want to begin to set a good trend. We want people in Ekiti to show Nigeria the way, debate serious issues. If Ekiti leads, Nigeria will follow. And it is a good state to use, by coincidence, because it's a state that is full of, that is politically mature. So let's use the Ekiti elections to put issues on the table that concern people in the Ekiti. And let's see what happens in the Ekiti. Nigeria will follow.
But there are so many other issues to raise with you on this matter, but you've spoken about the need for people to get into politics. There are so many questions. Someone like you, for instance, having sat at boardrooms and having to work with policies and instruments of economic indices and all, you would want to get into a thing that you can make impact or influence one thing or the other. How easy would that be for anyone such as yourself or anyone else you are calling to join these political parties? We'll find out from you when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. We're having a conversation with Mr. Atedo Peterside. Marpa would also like to weigh in.
Indeed, thank you. So, Mr. Peterside, welcome to the program. We've been speaking for quite a while, and I've been listening intently to you. I know that through the ANAP Foundation, you have gotten a number of influential, or should I say influencers? I hate to use that word, but let me say people who are influential in their spheres to encourage Nigerians to pick up their voters' card. And I know that you've also expressed the desire that things will change a little bit better in the new dispensation. However, we know that this cannot just be done with wishes. You're doing your little bit in your corner through ANAP Foundation. But then there's questions as to what exactly will be the choices. People think that, when a lot of Nigerians are outside the sphere where choices are made in terms of who eventually emerges from the political parties, that we've already been left with the short end of the stick. Very much like many other elections, it will be, the choices that people might have might be very limiting. And maybe that could even discourage the use of a voter card, which they ordinarily might want to use in the first instance. So how do you think that within political parties, that Nigerians can pressure that some form of conversation, the people who have the skills, the prerequisite skills of being called leaders can actually emerge, people who can speak convincingly and encourage and inspire the people? How do you think we can pressure political parties for this sort of leaders to emerge?
I'm one for always telling the truth. It's difficult for a drug addict to suddenly go off drugs overnight, or for a drunkard to suddenly stop drinking alcohol. I don't think you're going to be able to change a defective organization in 4 weeks. So therefore, I believe that PDP, APC, their present structure revolves around godfatherism. Godfathers determine everything. And those godfathers, in an indirect primary, are important because they are power brokers. And you're right, they can deliver poor choices for you because a defective system can lead to a bad outcome. But the good news is that if you look at the data, and I'm a data person, in 2011, 54% of Nigerians in an opinion poll, ANAP Foundation financed, 54% of Nigerians in 2011, before the elections, were endorsing PDP and Goodluck Jonathan. Fast forward to 2022, the latest opinion polls show that 40% of Nigerians do not want APC or PDP. So what you find is that, which means that APC and PDP, between them, are sharing 60%. So yes, they sound secure, but depending on what happens between now and February or March next year, you may find that they're vulnerable. If they purge themselves of their bad behavior, Nigerians may reward them. If they continue to behave badly, Nigerians may punish them. So I think the challenge is for the other registered political parties to tap into this groundswell of opposition to APC PDP, which is 40% high. So you may soon find that by February next year, over half the Nigerians don't want to see APC or PDP. Because in any case, if you're in charge, you're responsible for all the problems. If you destroy jobs, it's your fault. If inflation is high, it's your fault. So that means things are not done. So the
was this a poll that ANAP Foundation conducted? Was this I just want to find out if this was a poll that ANAP Foundation conducted.
Look, I was actually, we have been conducting polls through NOI polls, who are a leading company for doing opinion polls. I actually contacted them because I felt the same feedback around the country. People say they don't want the APC PDP. I called them to commission them to do the poll because we have to pay them. Guess what? They told me that on their own they've done the poll and they will send me the results. So they sent me the results. So I changed my request because sometimes they do some things by themselves. They've done it by themselves. So I now told them that, you know what? I'm going to pay you to go on doing this poll in the future so we can see a trend. If 40% don't want APC PDP and in a month's time it falls to 30%, it tells you something. If it increases to 45%, it tells you something. I'm a data person. I've always followed data all my life. So the point I'm saying is that the jury is out there, but 40% is a very high figure.
Now, whether that 40% will participate in the polls is a question, because don't forget that there are many fringe parties. We know that right now, in the last election, a third force tried to come up. A few other options trying to show up this time around. So it doesn't look like there is a concrete, viable, major third alternative. We saw what the APC had to do to be able to wrest power in 2015, and the preparation started way before 2014. So I'm wondering whether you really see a place where the 40%, assuming they all had voters' cards, because that's another conversation entirely, whether they'll be willing to coalesce for one particular candidate, or say we're pouring all our votes to one particular candidate, or a third force even coming out to say this 40% are the votes that we are after. Who knows what might happen to the 60% that the two major parties are sharing, but let us see how we can target and get all of the votes for this 40%. Do you see that happening at all?
Look, I already said it before, the next election is Ekiti. Ekiti will tell you who came first, who came second, who came third. And we have commissioned an opinion poll. I don't just sit down and manufacture data. The results will be out in about a week. 1 week from now, we will publish the results. But I can tell you one thing. There's a reason we're doing the poll at all. We don't do an opinion poll every time. Some people came to me and said, Anambra election. We put an ANAP Foundation pay for an opinion poll. They want to know what's going to happen. I said, hang on a second. ANAP Foundation does not have money to throw away. I know what's going to happen. And I say, what's going to happen? The Soludo will win. It will be a landslide. So why would I waste my money paying anybody to tell me that Soludo and Opga will win an election? That's the reason we're doing the Ekiti election. Because we can feel the pulse, and we believe that on the ground in Ekiti and nationally, there's a sea change. And Ekiti will tell us who is truly the third party. And I can make a prediction so that we can compare it with the poll, because for us to do a poll, it's because you got some feedback from Ekiti. I can make a prediction on which three parties will be the top three in Ekiti. So if those are the top three, then you can ask yourself, where's the third force? I can tell you here and now that when that poll result comes out, I expect to see at the top, in whatever order, APC, SDP, and PDP, in whatever order. So let's wait for the poll result and publish it. I can even come back on your channel TV and show you the result. It will be detailed, demography, showing age groups, what the preferences are. Coming first, second, or third in the Olympic Games is very easy sometimes. So sometimes you need a photo finish to find out who came third or fourth. But in Ekiti, I don't see that. I think it will be clear in Ekiti who the third force is. Indeed, the so-called third force will be the first or second.
Let me ask you this, and it's a very personal question, because I know that you also worked very closely with President Goodluck Jonathan in his tenure. Right now, there's been rumor that he's going to defect to the APC, and that he hasn't denied those rumors. He's been saying that he's consulting. He's been telling people to be patient, that he's still consulting. But there were strong words that he was going to declare for presidency, and the word out on the street was that he was going to be declaring on the platform of the APC. What did you make of the news?
You know, again, I'm a data person. I'm sorry, I cannot change who I am. Goodluck Jonathan, I was on his economic team. I worked with him. I was also here at his economic team. Let me use the data. I said in 2011, Goodluck Jonathan had a 54% approval rating. By 2015, for the election, it had collapsed to below 26%. The recent poll I saw, not done by us, because we don't waste time on things that are not that relevant. The recent poll I saw, his approval rating was below 5%. So look, everybody's free to ignore data and come out and do anything they want to do. In fact, I hope that APCs of this world will make a mistake and bring up people who the approval ratings are very low. You cannot fool all of the people all of the time. He was the best candidate. I voted for him proudly in 2011. That was a different era. That was a totally different era. The skill sets, the gravity of the problems, the courage required, and so it's a totally different job. Time does not stand still. But please let parties ignore data and bring out anybody they like. Everybody should run the party the way they want to run their party. I have no say in APC. I have no say in PDP. I joined SDP just this week. I have a bit of a say, but I'm not even a party officer. I'm in the chapter. The chairman of my state chapter is a lady who is below 35. You know, these are young people that have come in en masse because they don't want APC, they don't want PDP. So I'm following them. My chairman is a young lady that is below 35.
I do not know where you're registered now. Are you registered in Lagos, or are you registered in your home state? Where precisely are you registered? I'm just a little curious.
Yeah, let me just make it clear. The national chairman of SDP is in Abuja. I believe he's 52. I am resident in Lagos. This is the 21st century. I'm from River State. I'm resident in Lagos, and I joined the SDP in Lagos. So I was talking about the chairman of SDP in Lagos. It's a young lady below 35, and I enjoy working under her leadership.
The reason I ask this is because I'm sure that you're also passionate about what is also happening in your home state, in River State, and I'm sure that you also want, even if something were good, you will always desire better. That's just the nature of things. So I'm wondering whether you would also like to bring your influence to bear on the local politics in your state. That's why I'm asking that question. Not because I do not think that you're cosmopolitan enough not to register in Lagos, where you currently reside, and believe that maybe citizenship should be by residency, not by indigenship. That's not why I'm asking that. It's because of whether or not you would want to also have an influence or bring something to bear in the local politics of River State.
Let me make it very clear. Nowadays, like about the 21st century, of course, even yesterday, there are several young Rivers people sending messages. Some say they are doing this, they are happy, they are not happy. But the point I'm making is that let's again tell the truth. I think I have the bigger voice at the national level. Like now, I'm on Channels TV. I've got a number of invitations to come and talk on TV to the national issues. I don't think I'm a great voice on village politics. So I think it's different strokes for different folks. There are people who are much better than me at the village level, at the LGA level. So I think I'm better. I'm an economist by training. I was at the national conference. I'm more at home discussing national issues. So I'm as interested about problems in Borno as I am about Zamfara, as about Rivers, or about Lagos. So Unfortunately, they say all politics is local. But I think some people are more appropriate at a national level in terms of their voices. I've never gotten involved in an argument at village level as to what should happen in this village or the other village, unfortunately.
You just preempted my question when by saying that all politics, because I was just about to throw that to you, that they say all politics is local, but maybe you have chosen that your locality will be Lagos, and of course, that is fine. I'm just wondering, what more can we bring to bear? Because we've spoken about the problems of leadership enough. What concrete steps? We've seen a few. Obi Ezekwesili started a school, Fixed Politics, it's called. There is something in that regard to maybe mentor people and teach them what leadership is about, especially at the level of government. Do you think we need some more schools like that to teach people? Because it would seem that somehow, when you really think about it, it would seem that the only people who have any real formal training in terms of leadership are those within the ranks of the military. Maybe other, security institutions. What do you think we need to be doing deliberately to, bring to bear that culture of leadership?
I think there are many things you can do to improve a nation. And I will be the first one to come out and say, okay, secretary, various people contribute, train people, educate people. But at the end of the day, I began this program, I joined this interview by saying I thought there were 3 necessary things that had to be done before we could talk about improvement in Nigeria. And one of them I said was, you also have to join political parties. So it's good for Obi to train people, but she's training them, hoping, I believe, that some of them will then join political parties to come and impart that knowledge that they have acquired. It's no use being trained when you go and stay at home. And I think for too long, many of us have left the economy to politicians. We've tried to kid ourselves that you could talk to politicians and they will do the correct thing. And now we have realized that we've run out of time. So you have to mix the two. Because I think, that's why I wrote an article yesterday encouraging every adult Nigerian should go and join the political party. These people tell me things like, oh, it cannot be this, everybody cannot join. Hang on a second, in the US, even Supreme Court judges are chosen on the basis largely of their political leanings, among other things. So which means that even Supreme Court judges have political leanings. We have to make some things fashionable and make some things unfashionable. It should be fashionable in Nigeria for me to say proudly, I belong to the SDP. And please let me make it very clear. I've not said SDP is the perfect party. Perhaps I'm saying they're the least bad option. Because I have to choose from 18 parties anyway, and I cannot choose 2 who don't believe in democracy. So I have to look at the remaining 16. Of the remaining 16, they look like the best to me. So in any case, if you want to improve something, you must get in there and help them to improve. So I want to work under my chairman, who I said is a 35-year-old lady in Lagos, and people like that. Perhaps they're the future.
Yeah. So let's speak to that future, Mr. Peterside, as we round this off. Young people are generally, you, Maupe, inferred, and I think you also spoke to the dwindling number of voters who come out during the elections. A good number of people who vote are young people, and we all know how apathetic many people are to politics, to voting, and all those things. Getting their buy-in, building their trust in the process, in the electoral process altogether, is a lot of work. And there are those who would argue that we have started. What else needs to be done to speedily and confidently rebuild the trust of people in the political process?
Look, everything that can be done in terms of the law has been done. You won't get another law change. That's a waste of time. The current law is good enough if you want to implement it well. But I think the critical thing that will make people interested in this next elections series, beginning from Ekiti governorship, is anger. Nigerians are angry. I've said it repeatedly. The reason they're going to come out and vote this time is because they are angry. And people like Go Nigeria and other institutions are trying to tell them, if you're angry, get a PVC, go and vote against those whom you think have messed you up. Don't allow them to have an easy time. People are angry for a variety of reasons. I've said it repeatedly. Security. People have lost loved ones. People are angry because they've lost their jobs. People are angry because universities are closed or there's no educational system. People are angry because of the healthcare system that is non-existent in parts of the country. People are angry for so many reasons. But what Go Nigeria is trying to do is to tell people that, look, channel that anger through the electoral process. And I'll tell people as well from Ekiti, are you angry and are you in Ekiti? If you're angry and you're in Ekiti, turn out next month and vote in the governorship elections. Channel your anger at the ballot box and let's see what happens.
Well, we have to thank you very much for this conversation. And, well, you have promised to come back when you have more empirical data. We'll be waiting for that. Todo Peter Side is President, ANAP Foundation, and founder, Stanbic IBTC Bank. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next item is the last, which is your own contribution to the program. So let's begin with a tweet from Pastor Law Alpha Cross, who says in this tweet, a lot of attention has to be paid to the processes and procedures whereby leaders emerge via a democratic scenario. If we get it wrong, the country will bear the brunt. Consensus is anti-democratic, he says.
Well, famous Timile, he says, this gale of declaration should be suspicious because some of them might be using it as a distraction to the voters. They will end up with one candidate giving different reasons why they're stepping down.
Professor Imonoka Negbe Nakena says we must choose political leaders who will fix our insecurity and the economy and have national economic plans, policies, and programs to alleviate poverty, grow the SMEs and corruption, and enact feasible policies to unlock the potential of Nigerians.
Olagunju Oladele says it is in students' interest for lecturers to have decent pay and conditions. However, ASUU has placed their political objectives over the well-being of students. ASUU should re-evaluate their strategies and tactics, which should be aimed at making them financially independent.
Victor Owo says, where there is a will, there is a way. There is no will on the part of the government. That is why there is still no way with this ASUU rift. After over 40 years, who will bail this cart?
Well, that remains the question, and the students say they're not going to wait until candidates emerge at the primary, so we will wait to see what happens. But I sincerely hope that those who are responsible for taking up the demands of the students, the demands of ASUU, and seeing a resolution to this, some of whom have already picked up nomination forms for their political parties, will get to work and show what the stuff they're made of. Through the work that they put into what has been put in front of them, while they also use it to, use it as a showcase for what is possible come 2023 or come the primaries of their own political parties. Thank you for sending in your comments this morning, and thank you for watching. I'm Mark. Well going yourself.
And please, don't give up on the process. Get your PVC and get ready to vote. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.